Today's video is a collaboration. Tamara from Southern Wife Everyday Life got a bunch of gals together to do another cookbook collaboration, and mine is a what's for dinner out of this cookbook. I am strategically holding this cookbook up to cover up the mess on the floor because I've got 3 toddlers and I'm pregnant and due in the next few weeks, and I've plopped myself on this couch. By golly, I'm not getting up to trying to find a clean location in the house to film this intro. There's gonna be a playlist in the description with everybody's videos. Lots of girls are gonna be involved in this one. Lots of fun videos to check out, and I hope you do enjoy. These are the recipes that we are going to make from the Taste of Home book. I did not get to the sour cream pear cake or the beans. I will be making those on my Instagram if you'd like to follow along. It's plasma speedos. I cook a lot on there. Right now I'm a little sketchy because of how far along in pregnancy I am. It's getting a little tough. No, I'm really on there daily. I don't know why I'm acting like I'm not. This is the cookbook they're all coming from, all of these recipes. They've got it separated into categories. Grand prize winners is one category. Most popular recipes is another category. Best oven recipes, 5 ingredient favorites, stovetop sensations, slow cooked wonders, grilled meats, or grilled greats. These were actually the 2 that are our favorites. The 2 recipes we made were for the grilled greats section. Eat right, feel great. Unforgettable desserts. I'm sure there's more, but I'm retro dinner revivals. It's a really great cookbook. My husband was absolutely astounded at how delicious the lamb chops were and the grilled garlic steak. We were all right with the beef au jus. We both don't really like soggy French bread sandwiches. I mean, I do it for nostalgic purposes, but it's not like something I really love. The Arroz con Pollo was very disappointing. This is more of a Mexican version, and we're used to Puerto Rican Arroz con Pollo or Dominican. All right, let's freeze. Let's talk about the Arroz con Pollo. Why are you staring at a picture of my husband who's glaring at me because of something I said to the cashier? I don't know, it's just a picture in my camera roll that I thought was funny, and I wanted to insert it into my video. All right, if you're new here, some of you may be, it's not that the Arroz con Pollo was terrible, but if you don't know me, I am striving for outstanding recipes. I do not want to stand in the kitchen and waste my time for something that is just good. The Arroz con Pollo was good, but I'm not going to make it again. The only way I will ever make a recipe again, if it was just good, is if it was incredibly easy. And I mean like dump and go easy. So my standards are very high. My husband and I have a rating system. And unless the recipe is out of this world, I will never make it again because I don't want to waste my time. The only way I'll do it is if it's really easy to do. So you can subscribe if you like, or go to the Instagram, Plasma Speedos, and stay tuned there. Such a random picture. What am I doing? And by doing so, you will ensure that you will not miss out on my year-end most outstanding recipes compilation video, which I plan on doing at the end of the year. Tortellini my husband liked, and I did not so much. But I'm not a huge pasta person. I also think that one reason I didn't like it is because the tortellini, there's something inside of the cheese tortellini. It's one of those stinky cheeses that I don't really care so much for. Stand by on this and beans.
And beans.
Yeah. Jeremiah, what does this say?
Beans.
Beans, yep. What does this say, Jeremiah?
Beef.
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 Good job. He taught himself how to read.
Onion.
Onion, that's right. He's 3.
Butterfly.
Beefy.
Beefy.
He tries. He's so cute.
Butterfly. Puffy.
Puff, yeah. Puff pastry.
Puff pastry.
Good job, honey.
Pastry.
Yeah, good job, JL.
Nice picture.
Yeah. The first thing we do when we make the arroz con pollo is pour 1 3/4 cups uncooked instant rice into the bottom of a 9 by 13 baking dish.
Like a drop?
The whole thing.
Like that?
However you like.
Like that.
And then if you can use your hand and spread it so it's nice and even.
I can use this.
Okay. Thank you. And then we season some chicken with some garlic, salt, and pepper. This is really easy because you just lay the chicken right on top of the minute rice. Once I laid that chicken down, I just seasoned the other side of it as well. And then you use, it says a 14.5 ounce can of chicken broth, but I just use Better Than Bouillon. You take this chicken broth, you put it into a bowl, you mix an 8 ounce can of tomato sauce, and then 1 cup of picante sauce. I dumped in the tomato sauce first just so I could use it as a measuring cup for the picante sauce, so I didn't waste another dish. And you just mix it all together. You really should try this recipe if this seems like something you'd like. Don't think that I'm like dogging this recipe because it's really easy, and if you think you'd like it, make it. Then you take, it says a half a cup chopped onion and a half a cup chopped green pepper, but I mean, I just use the entire pepper because I'm not gonna save it. Put it all into the bowl and mix it around. If you like Mexican food, I would definitely give it a try, but we're just not huge Mexican food people. I did add some sazon because that's just more of a Dominican lean on things, and it really did need the flavor. I would season this more than what they suggested to season it, just because I feel like, the seasoning is lacking a lot of times, but maybe I just like a lot of seasoning anyhow. I would doctor this up any way you like. You could use adobo or whatever like Mexican seasoning blend you choose to, and then you just pour it right on top of the chicken. It really is so easy because you don't have to pre-cook the chicken, you don't have to pre-cook the rice. You literally just lay it all into a pan and it cooks in the oven, and it was good. Definitely not a favorite of ours, just because that's a different taste, but possibly a favorite of yours. And then it says that you cover it and bake it at 350 for 55 minutes, but I'll tell you right now that 55 minutes is way too long. Mine was done in about a half an hour. I use a little temperature checker to check the temperature because I can't stand overcooked chicken. I think it's dry and disgusting, but like I said, mine was done way sooner than 55 minutes. Pull it out of the oven, uncover it, and sprinkle it with cheddar cheese and Colby Jack cheese, and stick it back in the oven just long enough for the cheese to melt, and this is what you got. I served it with some chips and some avocado. I think I even put some sour cream on my plate eventually, some cilantro and some lime, and it was pretty good meal. Now we're making onion beef au jus. I'm using some rump roast here. If you don't know the difference between rump roast and chuck roast, rump roast will kind of stay in slices better than a chuck roast will. I'm going to use my multi-cooker, which eventually ends up being too small because I can't get the lid on to make it a slow cooker, but it does ask you to sear the meat first. That's why I was trying to do it all in one appliance, but I didn't get there. Throw that puppy into the sizzling hot pan and brown it on all sides. It tells you to do the next part in a separate pan, but I wasn't about to do that. You just throw 2 tablespoons of butter in and some onions. Well, let's see. I'm going to tell you how many chopped onions. 2 large sweet onions cut into 1/4 inch slices. And you brown those onions up just like I'm doing here. I have my rump roast tilted upward because I'm trying to brown it on literally every single side. The other ingredients you need for this recipe is 1/2 cup reduced sodium soy sauce, 1 envelope onion soup mix, a garlic clove, and a teaspoon of browning sauce. Sometimes you can find it in the grocery store. I've purchased mine off of Amazon. The browning sauce is this yellow lidded thing here. It's just kind of gives it some depth, some umami. Maybe you can add some Worcestershire sauce or some beef bouillon or something to get the same type of flavor. You just mix it all in there. I am just verbally walking you through these recipes. I learned recently that if I took a picture of the recipe and showed it to you on the screen or typed it on the description, it's like copyright laws or something like that. Anyhow, I'll just be walking you through the ingredients and you can jot them down as I say them out loud to you, like we used to when we watched cooking shows when we were younger in the 90s. Remember that? You just sat there with your pen and your paper and you wrote down these recipes. Anyhow, I'm turning it off saute and I'm going to put it on slow cook and then soon realize my lid doesn't fit, so I have to transfer it all to my crock pot anyway. That's been going in the crock pot all day. I take some French loaf and I cut it on the plastic wrap because, like Paisley the other day, I'm just too lazy to grab a cutting board. With this French loaf, I picked out the insides and made croutons with the guts of the bread. We're not big on super bready sandwiches. My husband likes the bread to be more of a carrier, like a handle for the meat. And if there's too much bread, there's too much bread. So I picked out little chunks of the insides to create sort of a dent inside to rest the meat in, and then I took all of those little bread chunks and made myself some croutons that were actually pretty good.
Go. Do you want to press the silver button?
You need to get some croutons. I thought you'd like some real life sounds. That's why I left that last clip as I did. My 1-year-old was slapping the foil. This is my Pampered Chef tool that I have been absolutely loving. I use it all the time. I will put my friend Courtney, I bought it through her Pampered Chef storefront, and I'll put her link in the description. It really is just, You'd think it was just like, I'll just use a butter knife, but really I don't ever grab my butter knife anymore. So the recipe asked me to butter the loaf of bread and cook it in the oven for a little while, get the bread nice and crisp. If you love some onion beef au jus, this is a really great recipe. I will actually have this linked in the description because I did find it online. I made mine a little bit differently. It tells you in the recipe to make the beef in the oven, but I used the crock pot and I just did it kind of my own way. But if you'd like the actual recipe, check the description and it's linked below. It was one of the winning recipes or whatever for onion beef au jus, and the ratings for it online are pretty high. I burnt my bread and I used scissors and I cut off all the black edges. I mean, you know, I'm mom life. That's my excuse. This is my excuse for everything, really. After your bread is broiled up and crisp, you just add some of that beef right on top of there like that and some onions. Batteries by the stairs, I think.
Mommy, can I ask tune it up?
Sweetheart.
Mommy.
After you've topped it with a couple slices of Swiss, you put it back under the broiler and melt it down. And these are my homemade croutons. We just had that au jus with a side salad. I liked this recipe, but like I said, I'm not a huge fan of au jus. I just eat it for nostalgic purposes. But if you were to eat au jus, that'd be the recipe I'd use for sure. The next recipe is called Rosemary Thyme Lamb chops. It was one of our favorites. It's so easy to do. All I did was salt and pepper the lamb chops. I didn't marinate it or anything. And you make this little glaze on the side, which is just a half a teaspoon pepper, a quarter teaspoon salt, 3 tablespoons Dijon mustard, 1 tablespoon minced fresh rosemary, 1 tablespoon minced fresh thyme, and 3 cloves of garlic. You just season the lamb chops and then you grill them until they're, 145 degrees-ish, which is about 6 minutes per side. And then in that last few minutes that you've flipped the lamb chop, in that last few minutes you just glob that Dijon spread on the top of them, let them finish cooking, bring them inside to rest, and it really was just some of the most amazing lamb chops I've ever had. I made it with some Greek-style yellow rice, and I grilled some vegetables on a kebab. Our other favorite recipe is garlic grilled steaks. All I did was use my little manual food chopper here, and I chopped up 10 garlic cloves, 1.5 teaspoons salt, 1/2 teaspoon pepper, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, 1 tablespoon lemon juice, and 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. And then I let her rip, mix it all up, and then I grilled steaks on the grill to your liking. You could make them medium rare, medium well, depending on how long that is 5 to 7 minutes each side. And much like the lamb chops, you just flip it over. There's no need to marinate or anything. You just flip over the steak, and then in the last few minutes of cooking, you spread this on top. Let the steak rest, and it was some of the most delicious steak I've ever had, even though I started a gigantic fire. That's neither here nor there. The outside looks a little black, and that's because it was. Yeah, I started a fire, but the inside was just fine. It was actually a really delicious steak. Maybe I'll start fires all the time. We served that with a side of grilled corn and grilled tomato. The grilled tomato stuck to the grill. I'm new to grilling. This is my husband's checking out the steak, so I thought I'd insert his clip here. I am new to grilling, like I said, so it's just trial and error, and I'm sure I'll get it eventually. My husband took a photo, a much more appetizing photo than I did, and I'll insert that picture here. I love that I didn't have to marinate the lamb chops or the steak, and it still came out so delicious. These are must-try recipes. Up next is Pastry Pot Pie. This was one of the more labor-intensive recipes, and I actually prefer my chicken pot pie that I made in a video ages ago, 5 years ago, I think, even before I had kids. I was still in the Navy. But that recipe will be linked in the description. All the ingredients that you need are laid out here on the counter, but I was able to find the recipe and it's linked in the description if you're interested. Anyway, it was pretty good, but I had to doctor it up to make it taste anything close to the one that I originally make. If there's anything any good chef will tell you, it's to not crowd the meat in your pan, which is something that I always do. I've crowded that meat and I'm cooking it in a separate pan. You're supposed to use the same pan that you cooked the meat in to cook the onion in, but the time constraints that I was under, it was unreal. The children, I'm telling you what. So I had to saute my onions in a separate pan. The reason why it'd be nice to cook it in the same pan that the chicken was in is especially if you used a non-stick and you created a delicious fond, that really would have taken this recipe to the next level. But even considering that that didn't happen, I know that this recipe still isn't as good as the recipe I posted a long time ago. I added some celery seed here just because the original recipe that I make has it, and when I tasted the sauce, it wasn't very great. One thing that I do suggest doing anytime you make a chicken pot pie is before you assemble it, take the time to taste the sauce. Add more salt little by little by little, because that really is the carrier for the entire recipe. And if you don't get the gravy or the sauce right, your chicken pot pie is not going to be very good. So I spent a lot of time tasting it, adding seasonings, and making the sauce the best I could possibly make it. I put the chicken and the vegetables in the sauce, mixed it all around, and then I dumped it into this oblong cooker. The vegetables that I used were actually an Asian medley vegetable packet. I just didn't use the sauce, and then I chopped the vegetables up so that it was better suited for a chicken pot pie. And I realized I didn't have any vegetables, and I was just trying to improvise and use what I had. The footage I lost is from the day prior, where I took those 2 sheets of puff pastry and I wove them together. That'll be linked. Like I said, the whole entire recipe is linked in the description. This was in the freezer, so that's why it's looking a little stiff, and I just lay that right on top like that. It was a little bit more labor intensive than I wanted it to be, but it did turn out looking pretty nice. And I kind of like puff pastry on the chicken pot pie, though I do prefer Pioneer Woman's thyme pie crust for the chicken pot pie that I make. That's, like I said 1,000 times, linked in the description from ages ago. Then I trimmed it up with some scissors, and I could not find my pastry brush, my basting brush, for the life of me. So I sat there for a minute and thought about it, and then I just was like, whatever, man. I used my hand, and I mixed, that was a half and half and an egg, and I brushed it, or like hand washed it all over the crust. And then I baked it for about 40 minutes in a 400-degree oven. The recipe says 45 to 55 minutes, but I think that's too long. My crust would have been burnt had I done that. It sure does look like a showstopper, though, doesn't it? It's awfully beautiful, even though I do like my original pot pie better, which is linked in the description. Though this was very good, it's too labor-intensive for me to ever make it again. Next up, we made a really easy pasta. This one here is called Beefy Tortellini Skillet, and it is by far the easiest recipe I made all week long, and my husband liked it. I think I would have liked it too, but the tortellini I got from the grocery store had some kind of cheese in it that I didn't really care for. All you do is brown the beef in the skillet, add some, well, it says beef bouillon granules, a teaspoon of those, but I had this beef broth stuff, which was fine. And then a half a teaspoon Montreal steak seasoning, but which I just sprinkled haphazardly. Then all you do is pour a cup of water into it, and then an entire package, a 19-ounce package of the frozen cheese tortellini. Mine, in this case, was refrigerated. And you let it simmer. I ended up pouring mine into a cooker because you're supposed to top it with Italian cheese, and I wanted mine to be browned a little bit. So I put it under the broiler in a pan that I probably shouldn't broil in, and then I topped it with some fresh chives. Incredibly easy to do. I do recommend doing this, but just make sure you pick out some tortellini that you like. That concludes this cookbook collaboration What's for Dinner video. If you do feel like subscribing, consider doing so. That would make my day. I do a lot of grocery hauls once a week. They're usually very funny. At least I think they're funny. I do some cook with me's to hang out in the kitchen. I've always got some little tiny tots running around causing ruckus, and they're pretty adorable, but maybe I'm just thinking that because they're mine. But I like to share hauls and things that I make in the kitchen, and I do always update what I think about the things I've purchased, and I give you honest reviews about anything that I have in the kitchen, and I would just really like having you around if you'd consider sticking around. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.